Welcome to the Mr. Paintbrush. Today we're going to go blast from the past as we do Citadel's Warhammer 40k Gothic buildings. Check it out. Alrighty, welcome back. I'm going to show you how I did this terrain and how I made my wash for it. Looks really great in my opinion. So we're going to start off by priming the entire thing black with my Steino Res primer, and then I'm going to go and do some spot highlighting with some Steino Res primer, but this time white, having that contrast, really trying to up that contrast by doing some pre-shading, and really just trying to get some highlights. I did some skulls on there and I kind of want to get the tips of those. I want to highlight the tops of the brick just so it get darker on the way down. So possibly having some water stains on the bottom is what my idea was at first, but I kind of switched gears with that by going for the bone color. Now this terrain itself, I think it's on the Assault on Black Reach. I'm not sure because I got it secondhand, but I did get the entire set, and it had like this flooring on top that was elevated, and I didn't understand why it would be elevated. Just, I mean, not elevated to the point of a second floor, but just right off the ground, and that just confused me. So what I did is that I cut that sucker out. Alrighty, so we're going on to rock from Badger Minotaur. I like to use Badger Minotaur paints on terrain only because the bottles in which they come in are really a lot larger than the bottles that you're used to, the dropper bottles that we're used to with Vallejo or Scale Color or anything like that. They're just much larger, so there's just much more paint in there, so I can afford to use a lot more of that paint. Now, some of the paints are not as consistent as others in my collection, but I did buy the entire collection. It was my first set of miniature paint, and I'll tell you, as your first set of miniature paints, you can't go wrong if you own an airbrush and you want to airbrush some paint onto a model. Minotaur is still the way to go in my opinion. I use them all the time and I have a great, you can see that I'm getting a great effect with it, so you know, it's not really a problem. Brushing on, it gets a little tricky. Nebula Red is the next step. Now this terrain piece had some bricks on it, and I was going for a traditional kind of subdued red brick, showing through and having a red. Now the red doesn't stay there as bright as it does later on. I kind of just like really even it out, but you'll see that later when I do through washes and stuff like that. But there still is a hint of that red going through, but definitely not as pronounced as it is now. Now, this kind of terrain is really neat because I could see it working really well with the Kill Team starter box set terrain. I'm still waiting for mine. They're out of print currently. Alright, so now going back with the rock, and I'm just blending these things in. I'm really hyper diluting the rock with some flow aid for the airbrush, for the paint, and some water, and diluting it down so this way it could just really just get a mist or a glazed type of coat to it. And I just wanted to glaze over it and kind of just blend the colors in, so this way the contrast is not stark but still just very subtle, sort of like it had many years of being there and it just kind of bleached out and dried out and the rain kind of like messed it up. And there it is. It's like a reddish almost sort of tone. You can see the difference right there, like subdued and then really, really bright on the other side. And I'm going to do the other side as well, so this way both sides have that subdued kind of look. A little less on the inside than on the outside, because the outside I can imagine see more weathering than the inside, but then again I could be wrong. Alright, maybe I went a little overboard with the rock, you see that? Next up, what I'm going to do is just doing Vallejo Metal Color Steel. And if you don't use Vallejo Metal Color, dude, elevate your game, or dudette, elevate your game and get yourself some metal color from Vallejo. Right now, I don't know when you're going to watch this, maybe you're watching this way in the future, but right now, it is the hottest thing when it comes to acrylic paint. You can dilute it, you can mix it in with other colors. The only way you're going to get get a better metallic paint is that you go through enamels and stuff like that, but that would be harsh with your acrylics paints. They do not mix acrylic and other kind of enamel paints. Plus, enamel can melt your plastic. All right, I had a hobby desk and I had a lot of stuff going on, so I'm gonna have to do this last part here on the side. See, I have a lot of projects there. I'm gonna use Ancient Bone now, and I'm just gonna put it into my airbrush, and I'm gonna spray it over the garbage can because, you know, I have just a lot of projects going on right now on my desk, and it's kind of embarrassing. It's because the airbrush broke, and for 3 weeks I was airbrush less. That means I had no airbrush, so I started doing a lot of little side projects, and I got into build mode and primer mode with rattle can, and because the weather was right, and I just kept on going and going. This isn't even a quarter of the projects that I actually pre-built with 3 weeks of waiting and waiting and waiting for the airbrush to come back in. It had broken. I sent it to Badger Minutair, and they said Badger Office Airbrush, and they said that they would have it back to me. Usually it takes a week, but they had a backlog of 3 weeks, so I had to wait and wait and wait. Now the good part is that it only cost me $12, and that's with shipping and handling. They actually repaired the airbrush for free, and that's forever. I love that policy that they have. Alrighty, so there it is. I cleaned up my project desk. I needed to because I was going to do wash. I'm going to show you the ingredients for wash. First, I use FW black ink, and then I mix some sepia FW ink, sepia, with that, and then I do a matte medium, a Liquitex matte medium, and then I put some Flow-Aid in, and then some distilled water as well. And that is my mixture. I just kind of like play around with that until I feel like it's right, and I test it on things like a test miniature or something like that. Even now I'm testing. That black is a little too black, so I'm going to add some more sepia to that. And there it is. Once I add the sepia to it, I'm just gonna layer it on. And I usually don't do washes like this, but the thing is that this time I am, and in doing so, if this was Citadel shade, it would take so much shade that, you know, you would just go through a couple of pots, and if you're doing a lot of terrain. So if you're going to do a lot of terrain, I highly recommend you use your own wash. I mean, you do ultimately what you want to do, but I recommend you just getting your own wash and using those ingredients. Just put it into a cup and call it a day. I'll tell you, with all these washes, I kind of put it into its own little container, and you have wash for terrain for days. In other words, if you have a lot of big terrain, you don't have to waste a lot of money in order to get a good, like a really good, like streaking, dirty kind of effect for your bone stuff. And the sepia really makes it, but I like it darker than sepia, so I kind of like go and do some black as well. Now, I got my inspiration from a couple of people. Les Burley would be one of the people. I don't know where he is now, but I wish him the best, brother. I learned from you, watching you. And recently, Black Magic Craft. Jeremy did a really good job on washes as well. And if you don't know Black Magic Craft, let's get that straight, not the other stuff I just said. Yeah, he's a cool guy. He's a crafter, and he has a lot of amazing projects. But, you know, a combination of both Les Burley and Jeremy, they just really helped out, and it really empowered me to create my own wash. And in doing so, it's very simple to do. I can do my own version, but you can check out their versions, quite honestly. They do a great job of it as well. But I showed you what I did here. I kind of just used it, and I just showed you the material. And what I'm doing right now is just taking the excess off, and just slowly taking the excess off. And that's what I do. Wipe my brush, and where it's pooling where I don't want it, I'm just taking the streaks. Plus, if it's streaking sideways, I kind of want to not get it streaking sideways. I kind of want to get it streaking down. That's where the dirt and grime from the rain comes going with the bullet holes and everything else. I can imagine that it would streak down. So that's what I'm doing. And, you know, you want to allow it to pool some. I let it pool in the windows. I let it pool in other places, and really, this wash really likes the detail. I mean, really makes it shine deep. Now, you can go back and some edge highlighting if you want to in some places. I didn't see a need for it in this one. Other builds, I tried it with edge highlighting as well, and honestly, it didn't make a difference to me, and I hate to say that because I love edge highlighting, but in my opinion, for terrain, it wasn't that great. And plus, terrain, in my opinion, aren't supposed to be the star of the show. They're supposed to be secondary to your miniatures. That's going to take the highlight, but you do want them to look really nice. And there it is. All you see the pooling right there on the side, and that's it. Looks great. Thank you for joining me. On to the pictures. This series of painting terrain, old terrain that I had, got secondhand. However, to be able to play games and do battle reports for 40K and Age of Sigmar for my game table. But I have all this terrain to build and I'm learning new things along the way. I figured I'd share all the things that I've learned. Like one, making my own wash so this way I don't have to use and spend a whole bunch of money on Citadel washes or other kind of washes, and then it looks similar and dirty and it has a great effect in order to use. So things I learned along the way, I'm going to pass on to you, and that's the whole point of these projects. All right, well, I hope you learned something. And if you like this video, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on the Miniatures Paintbrush.